Welcome to Podkey Fantasy Football, where camp hype meets actual workload math. A lot of August fantasy takes are really just people drafting labels instead of roles. Depth chart titles, camp buzz, even contract headlines can all matter, but only if they survive contact with volume, efficiency, and team context. The clearest running back lesson here is that fantasy value usually follows touches more than branding. A player can be introduced as part of a tandem and still become a workhorse if the team never finds a real complement, while a first-round rookie can still be managed like a committee back if the coaching staff doesn't want full pass protection and receiving responsibility on him right away. That matters for names like Trey Benson, where the draft capital sounds bullish, but the likely path sounds slower, and for veterans like Eckler or Derrick Henry, where the age discussion can drown out the simpler question of whether the offense still plans to feed them. David Montgomery is a good example of the cleaner fantasy thesis. If the early down and goal line role is real, you don't need a perfect talent debate to see top 10 upside at something like 18 touches a game. Saquon Barkley sits in a different bucket, where the bull case is less about blind optimism and more about rebound mechanics. If the line and coordinator improve the blocking environment, and if his goal line rate simply moves back toward his career norm, the jump from an RB15 type outcome is pretty easy to sketch. And in PPR, the three-down archetype still deserves the premium. Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan Robinson isn't a talent verdict so much as a scoring environment and continuity bet, with receiving work creating a floor that rushing-dependent backs just don't have. The problem in the middle rounds is that a lot of backs project similarly around that 11 to 12 points per game neighborhood, and once you're in that range, role certainty and draft cost matter more than vague upside language. That's why committee economics matter so much in places like Washington, Seattle, and the Chargers. Shared early down work, passing down specialists, and near-even carry splits can leave everyone usable but nobody comfortable. A split where one guy leads by only 30 or 40 carries over the season is especially annoying because it sounds like a lead back on paper but plays like weekly volatility in your lineup. If you're taking that kind of backfield, sometimes the logic is to buy the whole problem and roster both pieces, like people do with a Williams-Corum-style setup. At least then you're insulating the role. By contrast, a clearer early down profile like Jordan Mason in Minnesota is easier to price, even if the ceiling isn't glamorous. The more interesting mid to late round targets are the ones where the cost still leaves room for the role to be wrong in your favor. Jonathan Brooks, if the health curve cooperates, Omarion Hampton, if the Chargers settle on him earlier than expected, and contingency names like Tyrone Tracy, Ray Davis, Dylan Sampson, Jonah Coleman, or James Conner, where one injury or one rotation shift changes everything. Touchdowns are where a lot of fantasy arguments get sloppy because people treat last year's scoring as a stable skill when the team level rates often swing hard. If an offense runs hot on passing touchdowns or gets an outlier goal line season, the burden of proof should be on anyone projecting that to repeat. That's the caution on touchdown-dependent players like J.K. Dobbins or certain veteran receivers. If the efficiency spike came from a team scoring surge or an extreme conversion rate, then the fantasy floor is thinner than it looks. Saquon is the flip side. A 1 for 14 goal line conversion stretch is such a strong outlier that regression actually helps him, and that kind of rebound case is better supported than a generic hope for more touchdowns argument. More broadly, in PPR, I'd still rather buy receiving volume than chase raw rushing touchdowns because volume survives more game scripts than efficiency does. The receiver contract story is useful, but only if we separate what it confirms from what it doesn't. Big extensions for young wideouts tell us the team is committed and the market is inflating fast. They do not automatically guarantee a target jump or red zone breakout. With Zay Flowers, the stronger fantasy argument isn't just that Baltimore paid him, it's that the target share and yardage foundation were already there, and the touchdown lag creates a plausible gap between perception and production. Camp reports can sharpen that picture when they point to actual usage changes. Malik Neighbors returning to team drills matters because availability drives ADP. Josh Downs in 2 receiver looks matters because route participation is the lifeblood of fantasy scoring. And then there are the cheaper names where concentration could matter fast. Parker Washington after that late-season target share run, Malik Washington in Miami, Jalen Coker, Skylar Bell, Jaden Higgins, Rashid Shaheed, and the San Francisco depth names like Jacob Cowing or Dizon Stribling after the Pearsall injury. The key is to ask whether the buzz is attached to a repeatable path like snaps, routes, and quarterback trust, or whether it's just a flattering practice note with no guaranteed workload behind it. Tight end is one of the few spots where scarcity can still justify paying up, because the weekly difference between a real top option and the streaming pile is massive. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride form the elite tier. Then you get a second group with names like Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland that may offer more week-to-week stability than the flashier but less certain bets. Kyle Pitts and Harold Fannin are where the ceiling case is real, but the uncertainty is real too, especially around touchdown distribution and weekly role consistency. At quarterback, the market still points the other way. Allen and Lamar deserve the top tier, but the depth underneath them is usually good enough that waiting for Herbert, Dak, Trevor Lawrence, or even cheaper rushing bets like Malik Willis can be the sharper roster construction move. That isn't anti-elite quarterback dogma. It's just acknowledging opportunity cost. If the difference between QB6 and QB14 is survivable, and the difference between your round 7 receiver and round 11 receiver isn't, waiting still makes structural sense. Training camp information is most dangerous when it feels specific but isn't actually stable yet. For high-volume drafters, especially, the better move is usually portfolio control, not all-in conviction on every August riser. If you're already overweight on a thin-outcome player, you don't need one more glowing beat report to keep pushing. That connects to offensive environment bets. Team touchdowns, play volume, and pace can change dramatically year to year, and those changes can support stacking teammates in the right ecosystems, like Dallas, Chicago, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, or Denver. But those same environment arguments need regression discipline too. If a team lived on unsustainable pass volume or touchdown efficiency, some of that production may disappear even if the offense is still good. San Francisco is the hardest current team to price because the injury cluster creates genuine uncertainty at multiple spots, and Kyle Shanahan's recovery after the car accident adds a team-level variable that's meaningful but hard to model. McCaffrey may still be relatively insulated, but once injuries start stacking around the ecosystem, usage quality, play sequencing, and scoring expectation all get shakier for everyone else. The cleanest edge right now is still separating stable volume from stories that only sound stable. Thanks for listening to Podkey Fantasy Football. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.